Welcome to this installment of the Commonwealth of Learning's Open Education Week interview series, in which we'll discuss open education resources in the Pacific region. I'm Dr. Jako Olivier, Advisor Higher Education at the Commonwealth of Learning. Joining me today is Dr. Shikha Raturi, Program Coordinator for Tertiary Teaching and E-Learning at the University of the South Pacific in Fiji. She is a chemist turned educationist. She taught chemistry in Kenya and Papua New Guinea before going to Fiji. She's been using open educational resources for many years, and according to her, the use of appropriate technologies prompted her to move to education. She's also an active community worker. Welcome. Dr. Raturi, you were one of the background authors for the recently released Global Education Monitoring Report 2024, Pacific Technology in Education, a tool on whose terms. This was, of course, a co-publication between the GEM report team and the Commonwealth of Learning. This report noted the importance of open educational resources for the region. Can you share a bit about the emergence of open education resources in the Pacific?
Thank you, Dr. Jako, for the opportunity to share my thoughts on OER developments in the Pacific. And also, it was a pleasure to participate in the GEM background report. So, as I have emphasized there, OER are imperative for education systems resilience. And in Pacific, we have actually come a long, long way from shying away from OER to now actively using it. Perhaps I should mention that engaging individuals and institutions in collaborative project and in participation at regional and global events has been instrumental in the emergence of OER in this part of the world. So first of all, I would like to share with you an ACP EU project called EduLink SiteCap as one of the early productive partnership in this area. It engaged 3 universities from ACP countries, University of the South Pacific, together with the University of Mauritius and University of West Indies. And the project was led by Open University UK. It was a 3-year-long project starting from 2008 to 2010, and it had an extensive cascaded plan to achieve its objective. And that was basically to use open content for teaching while adapting it to fit the local needs using appropriate technologies. USP's CFDL unit, which is now CFL, was the one who participated in this project. So they repurposed a course on essay writing skills with readings and was commended for basically one thing, most of all, is that they captured the cultural nuances of the region in the process of contextualizing it. They also conducted a whole lot of workshops and discussions with the staff from different domains, senior administrators and the students. So I think that was quite powerful for a USP.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2012, at the OER Asia Pacific Forum in Bangkok, we had 3 individuals from Samoa, Fiji, and USP who participated. And also there was a team nominated by USP who participated at the OER Congress in Paris. And UNESCO made all of this possible. So these were important events and resulted in quite meaningful knowledge exchange that helped further OER activities in the region. And so since then, what we see is a series of initiatives have followed over the years in the region. USP staff and academics with support from its administration have engaged in OER development, not only just for USP's needs, but also working with ministries of education within the region. And they continue to do that till today. As mentioned in my UNESCO GEM background paper too, Packfold with assistance from COAL is helping us spread the word on OER, equipping education actors with knowledge and skills. And with the support of COAL, USP also developed its OER policy back in 2017. Now, what I consider a remarkable regional achievement is OER's emergence at the ministry and school level in Fiji.
Mm-hmm.
After attending the OER Asia Pacific Forum, Mrs. Salote Rabuka, then director of Fiji Higher Education Commission, came back determined with enthusiasm and to do something in this area. And what it resulted in was development of Fiji's OER policy in 2016, which was before USP. And this was possible with the assistance from UNESCO, USP staff, and others as well. They also engaged in promoting the use of OER at the ministry and school level. They produced 4 OERs back then. This was in 2014. So it helps. I mean, I always say it really helps when you have a senior administrator who understands the values and impacts of an initiative and takes a lead. So all in all, I would say that the current efforts by the Pacific Island countries and various organizations, they are really helping the OER future in the Pacific, and we are moving ahead to a brighter future, I would say.
No, great. No, thank you very much. In the Pacific region, we've seen in the GEM report and similar documents that localization is a very important issue for the region. Making sure that OERs are relatable within the context of each of the island nations. How do you see open educational resources localization taking place in the Pacific?
Yeah, that's a good one, because localization is happening, albeit very slowly. It needs to really pick the momentum to better serve our students. Let me share one example from early days to highlight its importance of, we need to localize it. This was from a donor-driven project when a course made use of an educational resource and gave a problem on accuracy. And it talked about a speeding ticket, a speed measuring device. Now, a student from one of the small island country calls the teacher to ask, what is a speeding ticket? So 30 minutes were spent just explaining that. So coming back to the question, what we see is that efforts are being made. And it is mainly, I would say, by teaching staff at individual as well as organizational level to some extent. But it is important to note, and especially for all of us who are in this business of advocating and working with OERs, that it is quite beneficial that teachers understand OER use is important for their students' learning. And then we are in a win-win situation. So we have to really convince the teachers. At the moment, the picture is quite good. It's quite positive. Majority of the teachers understand that. But I think we need to do more work there. So our program, Postgraduate Certificate in Tertiary Teaching Program, focuses on OER as one of the topics, so much so that we even have one learning outcome that focuses on OER solely. And our course has been making use of Cole's course, Understanding OER. And to me, it's like we must practice what we preach, right? So we have been using Cole's resources for our program as well.
Well, thank you very much.
So by the end of the course, the students, the candidates, they would have contextualized at least 2 OERs to fit their needs. And what we see is that many of these candidates have embedded these adapted OERs in their practice, and they continue to do so because they're already converted now. So at USP, our course design process requires use of OER. So that really helps at the institutional level. The CFL unit provides continuous guidance to the teaching staff on the process of OER, whether it is about where to find it, how to adapt it, everything really, so that they can localize the resource to serve their purpose. And this is particularly helpful for those who do not go through USP's PGCTT program. Another one is use of e-labs, which picked up the momentum during the pandemic. And what we also noted during that time was that some labs were actually repurposed because the the staff could understand, the academics could understand. They are not there to take them through every step. So there was a need to repurpose them. So repurposing came as a need at that particular time, as opposed to when you're doing it face to face and you're there to explain to your students various aspects of the OER. One of my master's student researched on digital simulations as pedagogical tools in chemistry classroom. And she used 2 simulations from FED, that Physics Education and Training site. Her research involved training the participants who were year 11 chemistry teachers, and she conducted pre and post tests and interviews. So one of the findings which is relevant to our discussion here is that the participants thought the simulations were useful, but it required additional instructions. So there it speaks for the need for localization. And another finding reinforced the need for training teachers and support from administration. That was even more important.
Mm-hmm.
Then when we talk about OERs, how can we not think about MOOCs? And MOOCs finally made its way in 2015 in USP when we developed the first MOOC on climate change in Pacific Islands. And this was quite a popular course given the climate crisis in the region. So that was another one. Now, if I think about other universities such as FNU and NUS, they are also, and the ministries of education as well for other Pacific Island countries, they're all moving in this direction. They're engaging with OER at different paces, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go through the sites of these education institutions, you can see plenty of OER are there from Global North. Now, what would be useful to see is how their teachers are using them. How do they repurpose it? Do they supplement it with further examples? How do they go about it?
Mm-hmm.
But what we see, and that's picking up the momentum, is the production of localized educational resources. But they are copyrighted. But we can see that the need to have localized material is being felt, and hence the production of localized educational materials. So these resources have a strict copyright, but it requires permission before somebody would like to adapt them and use them. So that's a good thing. Kiribati also developed similar similar localized resources. This was with the help of development partners. It was like flyers on remote learning, flyers on hygiene practices, things like that. So basically, I would say the pandemic also was instrumental in prompting the use of OERs by ministries of education, resulting in development of OER repositories. But what is again not clear is if the teachers contextualized it prior to their use. So if you think about OER repositories, there are plenty around. One is by PACFold for the region, which is doing fantastic work. Another one is developed by COL, which is also good. And they hope that that particular site, that particular repository by COL, hopes that Pacific SIDS will map the resources to the official curriculum. Now, this is where I think we have to be careful. Will they really do that? Do they have the necessary capacity to do that? So I think it would be useful to take them through the process also.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say there are 2 questions that I would like to end my response with. One is, do these countries have enough capacity and resources to do that? Mm-hmm. And the second one is, if they have a framework in place to guide OER development in their country.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think you've answered my final question in terms of recommendations there. But thank you for the number of practical examples you shared. But based on your experiences at USP and background in the Pacific, what 3 recommendations do you have for Commonwealth governments who are moving towards embracing open educational resources?
So I would say efforts are being made, but we need to enhance them, especially in 2 areas. One is the policy development. And the second one that comes to mind is capacity and resource development. Mm-hmm. I'm sure we agree these 2 are not mutually exclusive.
I think
And
it's actually three there, because the capacity and the capacity building is maybe on the side of the creators and users, but also the resources themselves. Or don't you think that that's two separate things?
Sure. So there are three things then. And I would also think what's worthwhile would be to stock take which countries and institutions have a policy on OER, and they have a systematic capacity building program in place for all the staff, whether it is the support staff, teachers, as well as even the administrators. As I just quoted, why Fiji went ahead, which was one of the first ones to have their OER policy, was because one of the leader came back understanding the value of OER. So having a policy in place, and then they started working on the resource, I thought was quite powerful. So
Definitely.
another thing that I think is important is efforts in monitoring and evaluation of the uptake, you know, if we are adapting it, if we are simply using it, or we are creating it. There are examples where people are also creating OER now. I see a lot of staff at USP, when they make something, they say, oh, I'm going to give it Creative Commons license. So that's a good one. But what another thing I think is could be a part of this is encouraging research by higher education institutions in this area. So that may also help. Yeah. So I think I've given you a few more.
No, that's perfect. Dr. Shikha Raturi, thank you very much for sharing your insights on open education resources in the Pacific. I really appreciate what you've shared.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jako, for the opportunity. It's a pleasure, always.
The pleasure from my side as well. I'm Jako Olivier. Thank you very much for joining us.